Hey everyone, just want to come on here at the start of this episode to let you know that the audio quality isn't necessarily all that great. I was recording with the onboard microphone on my Mac, so everything kind of sounded pretty tinny. And then I tried to do what I could to fix that audio quality in post. Still wasn't really up to my liking, but I'm just going to release this episode just because I think it's a really great conversation that I had with Alfie Amaya talking about the M. Night Shyamalan film Signs as part of the lobby film retrospective on M. Night Shyamalan. And I really hope you enjoy this episode. Also, be on the lookout this Friday. I will be releasing my top 10 movies of 2024 on the Real Lovers podcast feed. And then following Friday, I'm going to be recording more Letterboxd top 250 movies. That next movie on the docket is Spirited Away by Hayao Miyazaki. That will be kicking off season 9 of the Real Lovers podcast, continuing our coverage of the Letterboxd top 250 movies. And yeah, anyways, I really appreciate anyone that listened throughout all this time. I'm very sorry for the inconsistency of this podcast, but that's just how it's going to be. I'm going to try to be more consistent in March, but yeah, just given the state of the world, it's kind of hard for me to kind of stay consistent with all that stuff. But I do enjoy talking with you guys and talking about movies. And yeah, anyways, enjoy the episode. Sorry about the delay, and have a great day. That's it.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby.
What can make geometric shapes the size of a football field?
What kind of machine can bend a stalk of corn over without breaking it?
Can't be by hand, it's too perfect.
So the aliens can't read our minds.
Oh.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to The Lobby, a podcast that lives here on the Real Lovers podcast feed. And throughout this time here in the lobby, we are rediscovering or discovering M. Night Shyamalan's filmography in this retrospective miniseries that we're doing here in the lobby. And this week, we are talking about the 2002 film Signs, directed by M. Night Shyamalan himself and written by him, starring Mel Gibson, Joaquin Phoenix, Abigail Breslin in the youngest performance that I can think of, and then Rory Culkin as well. And joining me for this discussion of Signs, Alfie. Welcome back to the lobby. How are you doing today?
Hey, Marley. Thanks for having me back.
We had a really enthusiastic talk about Trap, and then after we recorded that, we were like, let's watch more in that Shyamalan film. We're recording this time. Let's get into our initial thoughts. Like, what were your initial thoughts the first time you watched this?
The first time I watched it, I actually watched this movie in theaters when it came out the first time. I was really young. I think I was about like 5 or 6. And it's probably the scariest thing I've ever seen at that. But I don't know, looking back at it, I'm really happy to say that I was able to watch this in theaters because I think it is one of my favorite films of all time. It's probably my top 30, probably. And I've seen it, I think, countless times. I had it on DVD. And I used to watch it all the time with my dad. And he really liked it. Just, I guess I'm a little bit biased when it comes to this kind of topic, what science is about. My favorite film of all time is actually Close Encounters of the Third Kind, which is, in a way, it's about UFOs as well. So this is something that really attracts me as an audience.
But you're a big fan of aliens. I can see. I don't know.
I can't really remember the last M. Night Shyamalan movie like the first M. Night Shyamalan movie that I saw in theaters. I don't believe it was Signs because I remember specifically watching this movie on VHS. We used to just go to the video store and just pick up any cool movie that we saw on the shelf, and we saw Signs, and Signs had a poster that really jumped out at me just because one, it's crop circles. Crop circles are probably one of the coolest thing that can be made on this planet. So when seeing that on the cover, I'm immediately intrigued. I do remember liking it a lot, like back in the day. The problem that I had, especially with this rewatch, is I feel like Scary Movie 3 has really went hard on this movie
Absolutely.
and really destroyed my viewing experience for this rewatch. Did this happen to you as well?
Actually, I would say that Scary Movie 3 is my favorite of those movies. I do think that movie is like genuinely good.
It's
But yeah,
good.
it is good. It is a good movie. And it's just so incredibly funny, but also that, yeah, it is like the main movie that they're spoofing. I would say that it does it a little bit. Maybe that now that I mention it, maybe it did. Because the last time I watched this film was a couple weeks and I didn't find it as scary as I used to. And it could be that because the same thing actually happened with The Ring, the one with Naomi Watts, the American remake. That something similar like that happened. That I just kept thinking about this Scary Movie 3, and then it just didn't like it that much that time. But yeah, I still think Science is a really great time. I really love that movie. But I think you might be right. I think that movie did dilute its horror pretty much.
Yeah, I could definitely see that, and it was definitely a weird experience. But I don't really see the argument about people saying this like a horror film because out of the two films that we've covered so far, The Sixth Sense and Unbreakable, I feel like Signs, especially when you see some of the filmmaking techniques that M. Night Shyamalan uses in this film, it's probably the most horror out of those two films. Because I really appreciate how M. Night Shyamalan doesn't show the alien until the very last few minutes of this movie. And I like that aura that he has where it's that something is up, but you can't see it. And that's something that I've always appreciated about horror, like when you can't see what's frightening, like the characters. So I definitely can appreciate the techniques Shyamalan used in Signs for that for sure.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I'd say that he does get a help as well about the concept of, because I'm not like a fan. I love movies about aliens, but not really like all of them. But I do love like the concept of the UFO, like like the mystery behind that. And I think it's something that people still to this day find particularly scary. I was talking to another friend earlier today about he was watching Animal House, I think, and he was telling me that why did I think that films like comedy films, when there's many of them who were like really highly regarded in the past and now they're just not aged well, but then you find films like Alien or The Shining or Signs, for example, that they just keep scaring people up every time they see it. And I think it's just that horror, it's something that it will always be rooted in people's minds, like about the same things. I feel like people will always be scared of like sharks or snakes and things like that. And I think the same thing, I think this is most not like a fear of aliens, but like a fear of the unknown, which is something that is very compelling as a storyteller, for especially for someone who as a horror writer. I think it's something that is very compelling, that mystery behind all that. And I think that even like the worst movies about UFO do still have that kind of a lift about the topic because it's just so insanely terrifying.
Most definitely. And I think what M. Night Shyamalan does like also really well in this, and we talked about like on our trap review that is already out at the point of this recording. M. Night Shyamalan is known for this stilted dialogue and how he uses that how he uses that creatively. I think Signs, especially on this rewatch, it's probably the most impressive that he uses this weird, funny dialogue just because I think that kind of allows you to, as an audience, to be like, oh, something's up here. And I like the way it blends from like the stilted dialogue to like normal dialogue. And I can't imagine what it would be like being on set at the time, because I can see like M. Night Shyamalan saying, say the line like this, and then like a few scenes later, he wants to like redo that take and say it more normal. You see what I'm saying? It kept the audience on edge where it's going, something's not right here.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I do appreciate the performances a lot in this movie because I feel like the log line of the characters is like really straight up. Okay, so we have, for example, with Mel Gibson's character, so he's a former priest, and he just the whole film, of course, he's moved away from that after his wife dies in that accident, and he just coming together to, trying to accept this sort of life form that lives outside of Earth, and then trying to, complement that with like his faith. So it's a really interesting dynamic that Shyamalan gives to all these characters here.
Yeah, for sure. It's very interesting dynamic, but also very simple. And Shyamalan definitely the thing I guess we can go into the breakdown of this movie. The thing that I love most about about the opening shot is that I think on the commentary, Shyamalan actually says that opening shot basically gives you all the information of what Mel Gibson's character is going through. The cross on the wall, how it's faded. It's a little bit on the nose, but he gets the message across that this man, he was a man of faith, but it's gone away and it's fading away. And like his kids, like in the background too, like in a photo, like obviously he's a family man. I believe we mentioned it on the Trap review, and that Shyamalan, he is very particular about his shots and he storyboards every single shot. And yet this is just yet another example where he plans everything in advance, and I absolutely love it.
Yeah, and something really interesting about this film that I think it's something that is known from him that is, I believe, started here, is that there's a lot of things that happen in this film that people go, oh, okay, sure, that I guess that's like really script move with the glasses of water and all that. There's a lot of coincidences going on. And I love that this movie is about that, about like, there's not really like coincidences, but it's really what was meant to happen. And it just connects everything at the end. And I like to think that all his films are connected, at least in spirit. And I always think about that when I'm watching a film from him, where something happens that, that it's really like good luck to any character. And I'm like, but I do think about that he's saying about this is all planned and that this is like fate, that all of this needs to happen. So I don't know, it comforts me in a way when I'm watching these films.
Yeah, for sure. This kind of go back a little bit when this film released. This film had a budget of $72 million. So it's still along the lines where M. Night Shyamalan is working within the means of what he can do. He shoots this, I believe he shot this outside of South Philly. Pretty much all of his movies that he shoots are within Pennsylvania and the Philadelphia area. And with a budget of $72 million, the box office had a final box office of $408 million, which is quite a big payday. I think it's not the biggest M. Night Shyamalan film of all, but it was still financially successful. But yeah, I mentioned earlier Abigail Breslin is in this movie. I honestly really forgot that she was in this movie. And I think that you mentioned the performances are really great, but I feel like Abigail Breslin's performance, M. Night Shyamalan has always been really great with kids, directing child actors, which kind of, I know people don't like calling Shyamalan the next Spielberg, but that's something that Spielberg was always really great at too. Direct kids and get certain performances out of them. I really like Abigail Breslin's performance here. One, she's how young she was, and also just it was very much what was going on. You can tell, you definitely tell something was up because of the whole water situation, and also with the dog as well. And it goes back to like how M. Night Shyamalan sees kids in his movies. It's like they're like a vessel into the unknown or another world. Did it make any sense? Or
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think this is when Signs came out, I think it was the thought of him being like the next Spielberg was percolating just a little bit, but I think that idea exploded after Signs. And I never really saw, like I mentioned in the Trap review, I never really saw the comparison, just a little bit, especially with these two kind of films, because I do think, I mean, he's a horror director. I think that most of his films are horror films. And I guess the UFO connection with like Close Encounters, I guess some people thought about that, but Close Encounters isn't really a horror film. But I think you do make a good point on the comparison there about the children in their films, that they get to do this incredible performances out of them from really young kids. Because Abigail Breslin, I don't know what age she was here. I think she was like 5 or 6. I think I'm not sure.
yeah,
But she was really young.
I think she was 5 years old at this time, and I don't know. I just really loved her performance, especially on rewatch. And even did I say Rory Culkin? Is he the youngest Culkin brother, or
I'm not
or
sure. You know what? For the longest time, I thought the Culkin brother that was in this movie was Kieran Culkin.
no?
And
I
then I
thought that.
rewatched it like 2 years ago when I rewatched at that time. I was like, wait, this is like Culkin.
It's funny you said that because I always thought it was Macaulay Culkin at this. We're always getting them confused because one, they all look the same in a way, but
Yeah,
but
I mean, as kids, at least as kids, they do look alike, all of them. Yeah.
But yeah, those are like our initial thoughts on Signs. So, Alfie, do you want to get into a quick breakdown of this entire movie? Starting off with the very eerie kind of opening credits for Signs. It gave me very Hitchcock vibes. I love I love the James Newton Howard score, which he's at this point he's become like an M. Night Shyamalan staple. It's very eerie and just very. We're coming off of Unbreakable and The Sixth Sense. We know and like we know M. Night Shyamalan style, but this kind of like go through me for a loop for sure.
Absolutely. And great that you bring out the score, because I think that the score is so iconic at this point. James Newton Howard's score. I feel like a lot of films to this day with similar topics, I do think still try to replicate that score. And some of them accomplish something, but I think this is the best score in this kind of films, because everyone just keeps trying to copy it, and it's just not happening.
Yeah, for sure. And then we lead into Graham Hass's or Mel Gibson's like characters like Farm. We're introduced to his family, and then you hear the family dog barking. Well, I did say children are like a vessel into like another world, but also animals as well, because animals will always be like, "Hey, something's up." Humans,
Yeah.
listen to me. That's when they go check on the dog, and that's when we get like the interaction with Abigail Breslin and the dog, and how she's trying to get the dog to like drink water, and the dog's not liking it. And that Shyamalan does the screenwriting. No, you killed the dog. You killed the
He
dog.
killed.
Are you?
He had the child kill the dog.
Yeah. It was very upsetting. I don't like that he did this, but what do you think about him doing that this early?
That was it. It is a little bit shocking because it's the very beginning of the movie. Shyamalan just like setting up the tone, and then this happens, and there's like this shift where you feel like, okay, so is this movie like really violent, or is this like the only instant that something like this is gonna happen? So you just on the edge to see if it gets progressively more violent. It doesn't really, but I always thought it was really funny that it set up a tone that it's just not what happens later.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. It sets up a different tone for the movie. But yeah, I know I jumped a little bit ahead there, but then we discover like the crop circles like in their farm. The fact that this is a practical effect, to my knowledge, is absolutely insane. And that Shyamalan had two big hits, and he's no, I want to do this all for free. And I think it's crazy he was able to get this done. Something this big and massive. Because crop circles, one, they're unknown. We don't really know who makes them at this point. We have ideas, but it's just an unknown art piece. I don't know. What did you think about the reveal of the crop circles? Where one, Morgan or Rory Culkin believes that like it's the work of pranksters, so it goes into like how we don't know who makes them, but we want to know who made them.
Yeah. For the longest time, I thought that the crop circles were like a place for that they landed, and they just their ships have that form, and then they were like, no, it's just this kind of like a coordinate that they made, but you never really know how they made it. It's just so that mystery really remains, and I feel like crop circles nowadays you don't really see a lot of mentions of crop circles, because I feel like they faded into obscurity at this point. I don't think we've had a lot of UFO sightings either, so maybe it has something to do with that.
It's interesting that you mentioned that because, especially watching this movie, this movie it's a product of its time. Because now, especially with the internet, how anything can be doctored and pretty much anything can go viral at any second. Crop circles, like in 2002, especially when I was growing up, those would come up on the news and we're like, oh, what made this? Now you can, like, someone like on TikTok could be like, oh, look what I found. And it spoils the experience a little bit where it's like, anyone can post that they saw this and it's like, it's not so unique anymore. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I feel like even within the story, when they mentioned that there's these prankster kids that they were doing that, and you don't feel like that's what happened, because you're just like, what is the point of this? Of them like doing this really elaborate art piece in your cornfield just for you to be like, oh no, I don't know what is. It really is a product of its time, the crop circles mystery. Because as you mentioned, at this point, it's just not, you just go, okay, so what do you want me to do about it?
Exactly. And then as we mentioned before, we get a flashback where we find out about Graham's wife, Colleen, dying in a car accident, which this is at this point, when we get that flashback, this is the part where Scary Movie starts embedding into my brain, where do I watch Signs or Scary Movie 3? And I feel like at that point, it was hard for me to go back at this point. But like basically, Graham's wife gets killed in a car accident, and that's why it was. And I feel like, and that like I usually hate flashbacks like in movies, but I feel like M. Night Shyamalan got to the point and got out as soon as he can. This is why he lost his faith, and you don't really need to know any more than that. Except for the person that actually was the cause of it, which was him. And like,
yeah.
Which, jumping ahead a little bit, I do love when they introduce that character played by M. Night Shyamalan. I love how the shot is just them at a diner, and that shot there's just a shot of M. Night Shyamalan. And it just looks like he popped up on camera. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's such a funny. It goes back to with our chat review how M. Night Shyamalan likes to embed comedy into his movies to lighten the tension. I feel like Science he does it exceptionally well, for sure.
Yeah, exactly. And it is funny enough. Before this, I was watching Long Legs, and which I was thinking watching it, and I was like, it is structured like a Shyamalan movie. And I do agree with what you say about the flashback thing. That I think that's why I thought about it, because it also happens in Long Lives where they are like this flashback that should be just one flashback, and they just start like piecing it up throughout the movie. And
Mhm.
you're just like, can you just show like the whole flashback in one sequence? And so I just kept thinking about it. But even then, even the reveals, like how it's done, it did feel like a Shyamalan movie. So I thought that was interesting. But what you mentioned, and as well, you mentioned that he always infused this like comedic moments into his movies, which there are some of them in this film that they really make me laugh, because it's just like people. It's always every time that they're interacting with someone outside of their family, that it's just because they just for some reason they look at them like crazy or stupid. And
This goes back to the whole Scary Movie 3 like comparison. Like the all the interactions with the sheriff, like
yeah,
it made me so much of the Scary Movie scene where the lady's hat got bigger as she walked to her car, because she had the same expression on her face from Scary Movie 3. And it's not the same actress, but the interactions that she had with the sheriff, because correct me if I'm wrong, like why was she there? Was she just trying to get information on the crop circles or anything like that?
yeah, I think that wait, in Science or Scary Movie?
In science. Sorry.
Yeah, in Science, I think if I remember correctly, Mel Gibson calls her because apparently they're really like close friends, and these people. There's these crop circles on my cornfield, and this pranksters that just like doing this to me, help me. And then she says something that she was trying to help this old lady about some fruits. And I believe like someone like smashed her fruits or something, that she had like this fruit stand. And she was just there as a favor, as a friend. Just, okay, let me go ahead and go see you, just, to calm you down. But this is not really a big deal. So I'm just going to.
And I think that she knew that what he was going through at this time with his wife being killed.
Yeah.
And I think she was also, like you said, they were both friends. She was also just checking in about a friend. And she mentioned she keeps calling him father at this point. And he was like, oh, don't call me that, because he lost his faith. And I wish that the movie didn't say that, because the movie's already established that he has lost his faith. It's just hitting us over the head that.
Yeah.
Like,
And they do it multiple times, that pretty much everyone he encounters, they're like, father, and I'm not a father, I'm out. I'm like, yeah, I get it.
and it's also, it's a little bit telling on how M. Night Shyamalan kind of sees his own personal faith, because he did grow up. I don't think he grew up Catholic, but I think he went to Catholic school. So it's like him doing a commentary on like his religion at this point, where it's, yeah, I went to Catholic school, but this is what I believe at this point. But I don't know. I don't think it really necessarily goes that deep, but it's definitely pretty interesting.
Yeah, and the love every interaction that Mel Gibson has with and everyone in this movie. Because like I said, I do think that people see him in a really strange way, as in there's this tragedy that happened and we just pulling out ourselves out to not mention his wife or anything like that. So they just kind of be acting really strange around him. And it just comes across that them being condescending to him and his family. I understand why he's so frustrated all the time.
I understand why it's so frustrating too. And going back to the whole stilted dialogue, like his interactions with these people are very stilted. And I still believe that, like I mentioned like earlier, like that stilted dialogue is alien kind of like affecting like the conversations. And that allows like the audience to be like, something is up, something is off here. And I think M. Night Shyamalan plays it perfectly, like in this movie. But moving on a little bit, when we start getting the TV news reports of the crop circles, what I mentioned before, this is a product of the early 2000s. It would be interesting if M. Night Shyamalan never remakes his films, and unless you're talking about Scary Movie 3, which I have no part of. But it would be very interesting to see a movie like Signs done in today's era with the power and like rise of social media, and see there would be different reactions. I don't think it would be that much different, but it'd definitely be.
I think there would be, like, for example, if someone came out and being like, I want to remake Signs, and I think Signs is a film that cannot be remade because of the same thing. It's just such a product of its time. It would be just entirely different, because a lot of the things this movie relies on the characters not having access to a lot of information. Like when they're in the town and Rory Culkin goes into this library and do you guys have any books on UFOs? And they just have one. And so he really doesn't, that book is really the only information that he has about what's going on. So this movie really relies on that. People not knowing what to do and what these things are, or having nowhere to really look for information.
Yeah, if this movie happened today, he would have just gone on YouTube down a rabbit hole, and then it would be leading into QAnon, which it's not like but going down like conspiracy theories.
Yeah, and they do fall into a rabbit hole.
Yeah.
The books.
Yeah, especially with the book where it's the infamous shot or famous shot of Joaquin Phoenix and like a whole family with the tinfoil hats on. It's basically memed everywhere, but it's them. That's them falling in the rabbit hole of them. Oh, we're aliens, or what are they going to do to us? So it's very interesting how that plays out.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's why at least I can really be assured that the movie will not be remade, because that's just not going to work in any way. I think Spielberg is making, I believe he's making a UFO movie next, right? Like coming in 2026, I think. I'm not sure when that's said, but I hope it's said like in modern day, so we can maybe see something like that like what you're mentioning.
For sure. But yeah, we get the TV news reports of the crop circles, and then we get the TV broadcast of the alien for the first time. Because I'm looking at Wikipedia right now, they're saying that it was at a Brazil birthday party. I thought it was in India.
Oh no, it was in Brazil. I know because he was actually, when a little bit, I think about a week before Top came out, he was on tour and he went to Brazil, and everyone was talking about him immortalized in Brazil in a way in that scene. So that's why I know that.
Yeah, it's definitely like it's definitely an interesting scene, because it's shot where this is Joaquin Phoenix watching this news broadcast on TV. And this goes back to like the whole analog way of interacting with the unknown, where it's basically just an old-fashioned TV. And he just sees like a shadowy figure walk out in the background, and these kids freaking out, and he's, oh my god, what did I just see? And I don't know, it's really well done. Joaquin Phoenix, we didn't mention it, but he's really great in this, and I wish
he is
to roles like this, unlike what he's doing now. We don't have to mention the film, but I think everyone knows what we're talking about. But he's really great in that scene for sure.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't think he's in a good light right now. But anyway, he really is. He's really good in this film, and I do wish that he would make more horror films. But I mean, he seems not to be interested in doing anything at all, apparently.
I think right now he's more interested in making money, and I'm talking about Joker.
Yeah.
Yes. The first one made $1 billion. The second one is probably going to make $1 billion, sadly. But even though people should just watch Taxi Driver.
Yeah.
And then we get to the night, I believe. Which I love the way M. Night Shyamalan is just slowly, I mentioned before, he slowly reveals the alien at this point, and it goes back to like why he's a really great horror director. You only show bits and pieces, and just the shot of the camera looking out through the window, and then you see the shadowy figure on the roof. Especially on a rewatch, I jumped at that. I was like, whoa.
That's a really good jump scare. I didn't really remember it because there was a period that I didn't watch it for 7 years, and I didn't remember that, and it really made me jump.
It's weird because And with Shyamalan, he doesn't, as I mentioned, he doesn't show the alien all that much. So I went into this expecting not to see the alien until the very end. And knowing that, I was just like, I jumped at so many moments, especially in the cornfield where you see a leg. That I was like, I almost screamed. I, just because I was like, oh, there's a leg right there.
Yeah.
And can we talk about the sound design too? Of in the cornfield, of just the sound design in this whole movie, but especially in the cornfield, it's it just it gave me goosebumps at this point.
Yeah, I think the best thing about this movie is that it really cemented a cornfield like a horror setting. Because now there was a time where people were like, I'm not getting into that cornfield, man. Because there's those like I always say that like A Quiet Place is like really inspired by science with the whole cornfield. There's actually a scene in A Quiet Place that I do think it's taken directly from this movie, which I think is this very scene where Mel Gibson goes into the cornfield and then sees like the alien's flag, and he just starts running. And it's really interesting how this one movie really just cemented that for cornfields.
And one, it's just I don't think I was ever able to go into a cornfield after seeing this movie, just because one, it's just like all the noise that the cornfield is making as you're running through it. I don't know what is in front of me and what is behind me. It just gave me anxiety for watching this movie, especially after. I've never done a corn maze to this day because no, I'm not going to just
Yeah.
something that
And
don't know
even
what's there.
the decision, I think even the decision for Shyamalan to grow a cornfield, it's very interesting because even before that, with crop circles, were really already a thing. But if you go back, you will see them like in regular fields or like fields that have a little bit of grown grass. But he decided to use a cornfield to set this in a farm, probably because corn is really tall and it's like you mentioned, it's just gonna cover you completely and you can't see anything anywhere. So that is a really interesting choice to do because that's how you know that he really thought about the whole film together, like how he could make work everything, especially with the horror aspect. Because it was really this film that it just came like crop circles in cornfields because it wasn't really a thing before.
Yeah, for sure. I totally agree. And then, like after the night attack, we were introduced a little bit to the characters' quirks and like ailments that they have, which is we'll get more into because Shyamalan's kind of like crutch that he always has to lean on. Basically, Morgan has asthma and he has an asthma attack during the night attack, and Graham has to calm him down and like that in that moment. And then we all know about Abigail Breslin's character. I don't think she has like any ailment. She just says the water's contaminated this entire time. I don't think that there's like any like mental illness there that is, like I said, that is a crutch for Shyamalan to have for his characters, but it's definitely like a ailment. But and then you have Joaquin Phoenix's character who was like former baseball player and he hit really long home runs, but he would always strike out as well, which is that was eating away with him mentally. But the thing that I love about that is like all of those kind of like ailments and the characters are struggling with, all like at the end of this movie, they all came together to defeat the alien that was like tormenting them, which I actually thought was like a brilliant way to tie everything together. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's like I said, I think that the main theme of the movie is really fate and destiny in a way that everything just constructed for a certain outcome. And yeah, I agree. I don't think that the thing with the water is it's more of a quirk for her. But everything I just really love that it just feels like every piece of a puzzle, like that at the moment you don't really see them come together until the very end. And it's such an adrenaline rush at the when you just go, oh, okay, so now everything makes sense.
And essentially, the whole contaminated water, Abigail Breslin's character was essentially setting up like a line of defense for the family. Like she is the defender of the family and like looking out for everyone and like putting up like the shield. And because as we know, I've seen like the criticism about this movie where it's like it's people always say, "Oh, if the alien doesn't like water and it will burn like its flesh or whatever, then why is it coming? Why is it coming to Earth?" I'm like, the alien isn't gonna come and stay here. They're just gonna come and take people away and take humans wherever they plan on going. They're not gonna stay on a planet that is 70% water. That's just how I see it. But it's just funny to me how people like try to poke holes in the logic of this. But
Yeah, I think that's the biggest criticism for the film, which I think it's stupid because even in real life, like NASA, for example, trying to go to Mars or the moon, and you're like, there's no oxygen there, right? Like this isn't a place for people to live. So I don't understand why these aliens wouldn't have the same type of curiosity in a way. And they know that the whole planet is in water. And let's say, for example, there was this planet who was like Earth, but instead of an ocean, they had lava, for example. I don't think that would stop humans from going there at all, even though lava would kill us. So I don't think it's a fair criticism. I think that we don't really know what the aliens wanted. Really, I do think that they came in for like resources, or I try to find, or maybe they just find Earth and they just recollecting information on humans and how they behave or whatever. I don't even think they were there for like conquering. I think they were just like exploring Earth. But yeah, I don't think it's fair to say that because I don't even know if they knew that they knew water because of, I guess Shyamalan was like, oh, so they actually, I'm going to go to the lake because they don't like water. But yeah, I think it's stupid to be like, oh, this movie sucks that the aliens wouldn't come here because water would kill them. Come on, please.
it's a ridiculous thing to point out, but I see it more as the aliens were here to take the humans or like what aliens do jokingly, probe humans or anything like that. And just, I don't know, it's not, like I said, they're not here to stay on Earth. They're here to collect humans and use them however they want to, like you said, for like information, anything like that. But what do you think about this final confrontation of, I know we jumped very far ahead. We got to wrap up here. But what do you think of the final confrontation, like everything that I described of everyone's like abilities being used to take down this alien? One, I love the final reveal of you finally get a full shot of the alien. One, it's very terrifying. I remember first watching it, I was like, that's a dude in like a suit. Now, but on a rewatch, I was like, this is actually, for the time, it's actually pretty impressive what M. Night was able to do to make this alien terrifying and scary. But
Yeah. And he was definitely going a little bit back to the Spielberg comparison. He was definitely using the Jaws perspective on that he wasn't really showing much of them, probably because of the budget and what was able to be done at the time. And the very end, same thing as Jaws, you can finally see the shark at the end and the final confrontation. And then now you can see the full alien here. This is one of my favorite things about this movie. I love that the first time that we see it, because after they get out of the basement, so Mel Gibson takes Rory Culkin and he because he's passing out because of the asthma, and he like lays him on the couch, and then he's just like looking for his inhaler. And then there's a shot of Abigail Breslin like on the hallway, and you can see the alien because the alien comes in and he takes Rory Culkin, and then you can see him. But the first time that you see him, you see it on the TV, on the reflection of the TV, the Infinity is using. And I think that is to me, that is one of the best shots from a Shyamalan movie. This is the kind of shot where you say, this guy has the juice. Because we've seen these aliens, the UFOs, everything on that. We've seen them on the TV with Joaquin Phoenix watching the news. And then you actually see the alien. And the first time that you see it, it's on the reflection on the TV.
yeah, I love it. It's so well composed and like just very well thought out, and just like also a callback, like you said, to like how Meryl first saw like the alien. beautiful. It's beautifully composed. I totally agree. And even like the scene before that, like before they even encounter, I believe they're still in the basement, and Graham knows the alien is in the house, and he uses the knife. One goes back to Scary Movie 3, with the whole knife underneath the door, like in Scary Movie 3, and very vulgar. Everyone should go watch Scary Movie 3 for the scene that I'm referring to. But I love just Shyamalan using reflections. It goes back to what you said, using the reflection of the TV to show the alien, using the reflection of the knife to like leave glimpses, and then hand comes out of nowhere.
That is a really good jump scare.
Very good jump scare, and it still gets me to this day. And yeah, I wish that like after the confrontation, the explanation like why Morgan wasn't the alien tried to poison Morgan with the mist or whatever, but since he has asthma and his lungs are closed up, it didn't affect him. So they explain that, and then we get the final shot of the movie, and it's Graham putting back his priest outfit on. I forget, like the priest garbs on, and it's him like restoring faith. I wish that we didn't get something like that, because I feel like the scene before that we already understand. It's a little bit too literal for me. But what do you think about like Shyamalan including that? So
I think I don't like that because, like you said before, this thing about him being a priest and his faith is just really on the nose. And I think he could have done like with less of that, but it isn't something that really ruins the movie for me.
no, it doesn't ruin it. It's just
Yeah, okay, so you could cut that out.
for sure. But yeah, but Alfie, that was M. Night Shyamalan's Signs from 2002. Final thoughts on this movie?
I guess my final thought, I just wanted to mention my favorite scene real quick. I think it's right before the movie goes full horror film, when they were having dinner. Right before that, because Mel Gibson just looking at the news. I don't think it was the news. It was just like a static on the TV because it just went out. And he was like, okay, so what are we having for dinner? And he started like asking everyone. And to me, they're saying like this outlandish thing, because it's let's have some pasta and then let's have some garlic bread. And I'm like, do you even have stuff here to make these things? And then we go to the next scene and they actually did. But I think this is the best acted scene of the movie, where Mel Gibson kind of starts like breaking down and berating everyone on the table. And Abigail Breslin just starts crying, and then they embrace. And then the movie just goes full horror after that.
It's M. Night Shyamalan flipping the switch.
Yeah.
I will agree. I think that's a great scene because it shows like the family's dynamic at that point. You like where they're at currently and like how all this is affecting them. And then, like you said, it just goes for full horror, which it's a little bit of a. Have you seen Megan? It reminded me of that switch. The first half is like this character drama, and then the second half just goes full slash. I just love it, like when films on a dime just switch up like that. But
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that, because I was also thinking on that one watching Long Leg, because I feel like there are a lot of comparisons to the Silence of the Lambs. The last 20 minutes of the movie, it just goes full on exorcist shit. And you're just like, wow, this is nothing like the rest of the movie.
it's definitely bizarre for sure. But
Yeah.
like I said, that was M. Night Shyamalan's Signs from 2002, starring Mel Gibson, Rory Culkin, and Abigail Breslin and Joaquin Phoenix. I still think this film holds up. It's still one of my favorite Shyamalan films, even though, like I said, Scary Movie 3 didn't have to go that hard on making fun of it. But in a way, I'm glad that they did. But Alfie, with that being said, where can people find you online?
Yes, so you can find me on Twitter at Fonzie Snowman. We do the movie ranking spaces from time to time, where you're welcome to talk about whatever topic we have at the moment, bring in your rankings of that. And yeah, and it's a good place, very healthy and competitive. It's a really good time.
It's definitely a really good time. Everyone should go check out like I'll say this. I only log on to Twitter now to join the movie ranking spaces.
Nice.
So that's the last ringing endorsement for Twitter or X or whatever they want us to call it at this. But
Yeah.
everyone should go check out those. Like whenever you see them pop up, go ahead and join and talk about movies. It's really fun. All the links will be posted in the description box down below. If you aren't annoyed by me by the end of this podcast, feel free to follow me pretty much everywhere on social media with the username Marley Loves Film. My most active places are Threads, Instagram, and TikTok, as well as Twitter. And yeah, let's talk about movies together. Join us next time on this M. Night Shyamalan retrospective series on the lobby, where we're talking about M. Night Shyamalan's The Village. Until next time, Alfie, my name's Marley Silverbrand for the Real Lovers Podcast,
And Alfie Maya from the Movie Ranking Spaces.
and let's get back to the movies.